3 seconds. That is all the time Elena had to decide between keeping her job or saving the life of the most dangerous man in the city. The entire room at the Onyx Lounge was silent, watching the king of the underworld raise a glass of scotch to his lips. They didn't see the white powder dissolving in the amber liquid. But Elena did. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She gave a secret signal, a movement so subtle only a predator would notice. What the Mafia boss did next didn't just break the silence. It broke the entire city in half. You are not ready for the twist in Chapter 5. The rain in Seattle didn't wash away the grime. It just made it slicker. At 10:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, the Onyx Lounge was effectively a fortress disguised as high society. The velvet ropes outside weren't for crowd control. They were for filtration. Only the people who ran the city, or the people who broke it, were allowed inside. Elena adjusted the hem of her black uniform, her fingers trembling slightly. She had been working at the Onyx for 3 months, just long enough to know the rules. Keep your head down, your ears closed, and your tray level. It was a simple transaction. She served drinks to men who could buy the block she lived on, and in exchange she made enough tips to pay off her father's gambling debts. Table 4 needs a refill on the Macallan 25. Her manager, a sweaty man named Gouda, hissed into her ear. And fix your face. You look like you're at a funeral. Elena forced a smile, though the knot in her stomach tightened. Table 4 was the VIP booth, the booth where he sat. Dante Moretti. They called him the architect. He didn't look like the thugs in the movies. He wore bespoke Italian suits that cost more than Elena's car, and he sat with a stillness that was more terrifying than any shouting match. He was the head of the Moretti crime family, the organization that effectively owned the waterfront. Tonight, the atmosphere around Dante was heavier than usual. He wasn't alone. Sitting opposite him was a man Elena recognized from the news, though not for good reasons, Councilman Halloway. And beside Halloway sat a man Elena had never seen before, a man with a jagged scar running through his eyebrow. He was introduced only as the broker. Elena approached the table, balancing the heavy crystal decanter. As she stepped into the dim light of the booth, the conversation died instantly. "Poor," Dante said. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of emotion. He didn't look at her. His dark eyes were fixed on the councilman. Elena uncorked the bottle. As she leaned in to pour into Dante's glass, her gaze flickered to the man with the scar. The broker. His hand was resting on the table near Dante's water glass. But as Elena poured the scotch, she saw it. It was a sleight of hand worthy of a magician. As Dante turned his head slightly to address the councilman, the broker's pinky finger flicked over Dante's drink. A tiny, almost invisible capsule dropped from his ring and dissolved instantly into the dark liquor. It happened in a fraction of a second. If Elena hadn't been standing at that exact angle, blocking the light with her body, she never would have seen the faint fizz as the capsule melted. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Poison. She froze. If she said nothing, Dante Moretti would be dead in minutes. If she spoke up, she would be accusing a guest of a powerful man, and she would likely be dragged out to the alley and shot for interrupting business. She finished pouring. The amber liquid swirled in the glass, looking perfectly innocent. Dante reached for the glass. "To the new zoning laws," Dante said, lifting the glass for a toast. Elena's breath hitched. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up. But she couldn't watch him die. She needed a signal. Something that wouldn't alert the killer sitting right there. Dante's hand wrapped around the tumbler. He began to lift it. Elena stepped back, clutching her tray. She caught Dante's eye. It was a fleeting connection, less than a heartbeat. In that second, she did something forbidden for staff. She didn't look away. She locked eyes with him, her pupils dilated with terror. She took her index finger and tapped the side of her own neck, right over the jugular vein 3 times, sharp and fast. Then she deliberately and forcefully dropped her heavy metal serving tray onto the marble floor. Clang, crash. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet lounge. Glasses rattled on the tables. Every bodyguard in the room reached for a jacket pocket. The broker jumped, startled by the noise. "You clumsy idiot!" he snapped, turning to glare at Elena. But Dante didn't look at the tray. He didn't look at the noise. He was looking at Elena. He had seen the tap on the neck. He saw the terror in her eyes. And Dante Moretti, a man who had survived 3 assassination attempts before his 30th birthday, knew exactly what fear looked like. He looked at the drink in his hand. Then he looked at the broker. "My apologies, sir," Elena whispered, dropping to her knees to pick up the shards of glass she had knocked over. I slipped." Dante smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Accidents happen," Dante said softly. He set the glass down. He didn't drink. He turned to the broker. "You know this scotch has a very distinct aroma. Almonds, almost." The color drained from the broker's face. Cyanide smelled like bitter almonds. I wouldn't know," the broker stammered. "Why don't you try it?" Dante slid the glass across the table toward the man with the scar. "A toast to our partnership. You drink mine, I'll drink yours." The room went deathly silent. The councilman began to sweat, loosening his tie. "I don't drink scotch," the broker said, his voice tight. "I insist," Dante said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command was absolute. The broker stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "This is an insult. I'm leaving." "Sit down," Dante said. That was the moment the world exploded. The broker didn't sit. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulling out a suppressed pistol. "Get down!" Dante roared. He didn't dive for cover behind his bodyguards. He didn't flip the table to save himself. In a move that shocked everyone, Dante. Moretti lunged forward, not at the gunman, but at the waitress. He tackled Elena, covering her body with his own, as the first bullet shattered the mahogany paneling exactly where her head had been a second ago. The onyx room dissolved into chaos. Screams erupted as patrons dove under tables. The strobe lights of muzzle flashes illuminated the smoke-filled air. Elena was pressed into the cold marble floor, the weight of the massive crime boss crushing the air out of her lungs. She could smell sandalwood, expensive tobacco, and the metallic tang of blood. "Stay down," Dante growled into her ear. He rolled off her, pulling a silver handgun from a holster beneath his armpit in one fluid motion. He fired twice over the top of the booth. A sickening thud followed, and the sound of the broker cursing in Russian filled the air. "Rocco!" Dante yelled. A giant of a man. Dante's head of security appeared through the smoke, firing an automatic weapon toward the exit where the councilman was trying to flee. "Boss, the back exit is compromised. They have men in the kitchen," Rocco shouted. Dante looked down at Elena. She was shaking her hands, covering her ears, her eyes wide with shock. He grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. "You," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "What is your name?" Elena," she stammered. "Elena, if you stay here, they will kill you." You saw the face of the man who tried to poison me. You are a loose end. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew how this world worked. Witnesses didn't survive. "Then move." Dante hauled her to her feet. He didn't treat her like a damsel. He treated her like a soldier. He shoved her ahead of him, shielding her back with his body. "To the alley," Dante commanded Rocco. They moved as a phalanx, Dante firing controlled shots to suppress the gunmen emerging from the kitchen. Elena ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, slipping on spilled alcohol and broken glass. They burst out the side door into the rainy Seattle night. The cold air hit Elena like a slap in the face. A black armored SUV screeched to a halt in front of them. The back door flew open. "Get in!" Dante shoved Elena inside and dove in after her. Rocco jumped into the passenger seat. "Go! Go! Go!" The tires squealed burning rubber as the SUV fishtailed onto the wet asphalt, narrowly missing a dumpster. Bullets pinged off the bulletproof glass, sounding like hail. Elena was hyperventilating, pressed against the leather seat. She looked at Dante. He was checking a magazine, reloading his weapon with calm precision. He had a cut on his cheekbone, bleeding sluggishly. He looked up and caught her staring. For a moment, the mask of the ruthless boss slipped, and she saw genuine curiosity. "That signal," Dante said, holstering his gun. 3 taps on the jugular. "Where did you learn that?" Elena swallowed hard, trying to slow her heart rate. "My father." Dante raised an eyebrow. "Your father taught you how to signal a hit in a crowded room." "My father was a mute," Elena whispered. "He lost his voice in the war. 3 taps on the neck meant choking hazard or poison. He taught us that when we were kids, so we wouldn't eat the berries in the woods." Dante stared at her for a long moment. He reached into the mini-fridge built into the car's console and pulled out a bottle of water. He cracked the seal and handed it to her. "Drink. You're in shock." Elena took the water, her hands shaking so badly she spilled some on her uniform. "Where are you taking me?" "To a place where Victor Cray can't find you," Dante said. "Victor Cray, the man with the scar, the broker. He works for the Cray Syndicate out of Chicago. If he was bold enough to try and kill me in my own lounge, he has backing. Big backing." Dante looked out the window at the passing streetlights. "You just saved my life, Elena, and in doing so you just declared war on the Cray family." Elena felt sick. "I just wanted to pay my rent." "Your rent is paid," Dante said flatly, "but your life as a waitress is over. You're mine now." Elena stiffened. "Excuse me." Dante turned to her, his dark eyes intense. "Until I find out who hired Cray, you are under my protection. You live where I live. You move when I move. You are a witness, a savior, and a target. Welcome to the family, Elena." The car sped up, merging onto the highway, heading away from the city lights and toward the dark, forested hills of the Pacific Northwest. Elena realized with a sinking feeling that she hadn't just spilled a drink. She had spilled her entire future. The safe house wasn't a house. It was a compound. Located on a cliff overlooking the churning Pacific Ocean, the structure was all glass and steel, cantilevered over the rocks like a predator waiting to strike. The gates opened automatically as the SUV approached, flanked by armed guards patrolling the perimeter with dogs. Elena stepped out of the car, her legs wobbling. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a terrifying clarity of her situation. She was wearing a stained waitress uniform, smelling of stale bar mats, standing in front of a multi-million-dollar mansion owned by a murderer. Rocco, get her a room in the East Wing. Get her fresh clothes. Burn the uniform, Dante commanded, walking toward the front door without looking back. And get Dr. Aris here. I want my men checked, and I want her checked for shock. I'm fine, Elena said, her voice finding a sudden strength. Dante stopped. He turned slowly on the gravel driveway. You're not fine, he said. You're shaking, and you're terrified. That's good. Fear keeps you alive. It's the brave ones who die stupidly. I'm not brave, Elena countered. I just have good eyes. Dante tilted his head. We'll see. Inside the house was stark. Minimalist furniture, modern art that looked violent, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out into the pitch-black ocean. Rocco, the giant guard, was surprisingly gentle. He led her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment. There's a robe in the bathroom. Shower. The boss will want to talk to you in an hour, Rocco said, closing the door. Eleanor locked it. It was a futile gesture. They surely had keys, but it made her feel slightly better. She stripped off the uniform, throwing it into the corner with disdain. She stepped into the shower, turning the water up until it was scalding hot. She scrubbed her skin raw, trying to wash away the feeling of Dante's heavy body, pressing her into the floor. The smell of gunpowder, the look in the broker's eyes. When she emerged wrapped in a plush white robe, there was a knock on the door. Dinner, a voice said. A maid wheeled in a cart. Steak-roasted vegetables and a glass of red wine. Elena realized she hadn't eaten since lunch. She ate quickly, the food tasting like ash in her mouth. An hour later, Rocco returned. He's ready for you. Elena followed him through the labyrinthine hallways to a study. The room was lined with books, smelling of old paper and leather. Dante was sitting behind a massive desk, looking at a series of monitors. He had changed into a black turtleneck and slacks. The cut on his cheek had been bandaged. Sit, he said, gesturing to a leather chair. Elena sat. I ran a background check on you, Elena Vance, Dante said, reading from a screen. 24 years old. Dropped out of nursing school 2 years ago when your mother got sick. Father is deceased heart attack, not war wounds, though he was a veteran. You have $42,000 in debt, mostly medical bills. Elena felt a flush of anger. Is there anything you don't know? I don't know why you did it, Dante said, finally looking at her. Most people in your position would have let me drink it. If I die, chaos ensues. Maybe you slip out in the confusion. By signaling me, you put yourself in the crossfire. Why? I told you, Elena said. I saw the powder. That's the how, not the why. Dante stood up and walked around the desk. He leaned against the edge, crossing his arms. Do you have a hero complex, Elena? I have a I don't want to see a man die in front of me complex, she snapped. And maybe I thought if I saved you I'd get a big tip. Dante laughed. It was a dry, short sound. A tip, right. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. He scribbled something and slid the paper across the desk to her. Elena looked at it. It was a check for $500,000. Her breath caught. That was enough to pay her debts, buy a house, and start over. There's your tip, Dante said. And a plane ticket to Switzerland is being arranged for the morning. New identity, fresh start. Elena looked at the check, then at Dante. You're sending me away. It's the only way to keep you safe. Cray knows your face. He won't stop. Elena picked up the check. The paper felt heavy. She looked at the zeros. It was freedom. It was everything she had worked for. Slowly, deliberately, she tore the check in half, then in quarters. She dropped the pieces on Dante's pristine desk. Dante's eyes narrowed. "That is $500,000. "I don't want your money," Elena said, her voice shaking but firm. "And I don't want to run to Switzerland. My mother is in a care facility in downtown Seattle. If I leave, she has no one. I am not leaving her." Dante stared at her, stunned. "If you stay in Seattle, you are a walking target." "Then protect me," Elena challenged him. "You're the big bad Mafia boss, aren't you? You own the city. If you can't protect one waitress and an old woman in a nursing home, then maybe you aren't as powerful as they say." The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. Rocco, standing by the door, looked like he expected Dante to shoot her for the insolence. Instead, Dante walked closer to her. He stopped inches away, invading her personal space. She could feel the heat coming off him. He reached out his hand, hovering near her face. Elena flinched, but she didn't pull away. He tucked a loose strand of damp hair behind her ear. His fingers grazed her neck, the same spot she had tapped 3 times. "You have no idea what you are asking for," Dante murmured. "If you stay, you are in my world. My rules. No secrets. No walking away." "I'm not leaving my mother," Elena repeated. Dante studied her face, searching for a lie. He found none. "Fine," Dante said abruptly, turning back to his desk. "Rocco, cancel the jet. Double the security at the Pineview Care Facility. Put a detail on Mrs. Vance." He looked back at Elena. "You want to stay? You work for me now, not as a waitress, as my personal assistant. You stick to me like a shadow. Because if Cray gets to you, he gets to me. We are tied together now, Elena." "Fine," Elena said. "Go to sleep." Dante dismissed her. "Tomorrow, we go to war." Elena stood up and walked to the door. As she reached for the handle, Dante spoke again. "Elena." She turned. "Thank you." It was said softly, almost reluctantly. Elena nodded and slipped out into the hallway. As the door clicked shut, Dante picked up the phone. "Get me the counsel. I want to know who let the broker into my city, and bring me Victor Cray's head." He looked at the torn pieces of the check on his desk. He had met many women, models, actresses, daughters of diplomats. None of them would have torn up that check. Elena Vance was either the most foolish woman he had ever met, or the most dangerous. And for the first time in years, Dante Moretti was interested. The first rule of survival in Dante Moretti's world was simple: adapt or die. Elena woke up the next morning, not to the sound of her alarm clock, but to the silence of the ocean. For a moment, she forgot. She reached for her phone to check her shift schedule at the Onyx, but her hand hit the high-thread count sheets of a bed that cost more than her car. Then the memory rushed back, the poison, the gunshots, the deal she had made. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was a target. A sharp knock on the door broke her reverie. Before she could answer, the door opened. It wasn't a maid. It was a woman with severe features, short blonde hair, and a tablet tucked under her arm. "Good morning, Ms. Cross," the woman said. Elena blinked. "Cross, my name is—" "Your name is Elena Cross," the woman interrupted, her tone brokering no argument. "Eleanor the waitress doesn't exist anymore. If Cray finds Elena the waitress, he finds your mother. So you are Elena Cross, Mr. Moretti's new executive liaison. I am Greta, the house manager. Get up. You have 30 minutes to be ready." Greta snapped her fingers, and 2 maids entered carrying a garment rack filled with clothes. There were no aprons, no comfortable sneakers. It was a row of structured blazers, silk blouses, and tailored trousers. "Mr. Moretti requires his staff to look the part," Greta said. "Wear the grey suit. It's bullet-resistant weave. Elena stared at the clothes. Bullet-resistant? Suit. Welcome to the firm, Greta said dryly, leaving the room. 40 minutes later, Elena stood in the foyer. The grey suit fit her like a second skin, though the material felt heavier than normal wool. She felt like an imposter. She felt like a child playing dress-up in a war zone. Dante was waiting for her by the front door. He was on the phone, speaking rapid-fire Italian. He paused when he saw her. His gaze swept over her, clinical and assessing. He didn't smile. He didn't compliment her. He simply nodded, as if inspecting a weapon, to ensure it was clean. "Let's go," he said, hanging up the phone. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, hurrying to keep up with his long strides. "The docks. Specifically, Pier 54. I have a shipment coming in, and after last night I need to show my face. If I hide, they think I'm weak. If I'm weak, they attack." They stepped out into the grey Seattle morning. The convoy was waiting 3 black SUVs. Rocco opened the door of the middle vehicle. Dante slid in, and Elena followed. As the car pulled away, the silence stretched. Dante was reading a file. Elena watched the trees blur past her, anxiety rising. "You need to stop fidgeting," Dante said without looking up. "I'm not fidgeting," Elena lied. "You're tapping your thigh. It's a tell. It shows you're nervous. In a room full of sharks, you never show blood." He closed the file and looked at her. "Today you are my eyes. I have security, yes. I have Rocco. But they look for guns and knives. You saw a grain of powder in a dim room. I need you to look for the things that don't belong. And if I see something, you tell me, discreetly." They arrived at the docks 20 minutes later. The place was a hive of activity cranes lifting massive shipping containers, forklifts buzzing around. But as Dante's convoy entered, the atmosphere changed. Work slowed. Men in hard hats stopped to watch. Dante stepped out, buttoning his jacket. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. Elena stayed close to his left, her heart hammering against her ribs. A man approached them. He was thick-set with a red beard and grease-stained coveralls. This was O'Shea, the union foreman. "Mr. Moretti," O'Shea said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Didn't expect you down here personally. Heard about the trouble at the Onyx." "Trouble is a strong word, O'Shea," Dante said smoothly. "Just a disagreement over menu choices. Is the shipment from Macau secure? Container 404. Just came off the ship. We're clearing customs now." They walked toward a stack of containers. Elena scanned the area. She tried to do what Dante said, look for what didn't belong. She saw dock workers' seagulls' heavy machinery. It all looked normal. But then she saw it. 50 yards away, near the top of a stack of blue containers, there was a glint of light, a reflection. It wasn't rhythmically flashing like a signal light. It was steady. Then it vanished. Eleanor's breath hitched. She remembered her father taking her hunting, teaching her how to spot a deer in the brush. Look for the break in the pattern. "Dante," she whispered. He didn't stop walking, but he tilted his head slightly toward her. "Speak." 2 o'clock. Blue containers. Top level. Something reflected light, like a lens. Dante didn't look up. He didn't break stride. But his voice dropped an octave, turning into a command meant only for his earpiece. "Rocco, sniper check, Sector 4, high ground." "Copy." Rocco's voice crackled in the air. Suddenly, Dante grabbed Elena's waist. The touch was electric, searing through the bullet-resistant fabric. He pulled her tight against his side, laughing loudly, as if she had told a joke. Laugh, he hissed through his teeth. What? Laugh, Elena. Make it look natural. Elena forced a high, bright laugh, clutching his arm. To an observer, they looked like a wealthy couple sharing a private moment. In reality, Dante was using the movement to shift their angle, putting a heavy steel beam between them and the blue containers. Crack! A bullet slammed into the pavement exactly where Dante's head had been a second before. Chaos erupted. "Contact front!" Rocco screamed. Dante didn't panic. He shoved Elena behind the steel beam, drawing his weapon. "Stay down." Gunfire erupted from the high stacks. It wasn't just one sniper. It was an ambush. O'Shea, the foreman, dove behind a forklift. "They knew I was coming." Dante roared, firing 3 shots toward the sniper's nest. "Someone leaked the schedule." Elena crouched in the dirt, covering her ears. The noise was deafening. Dust and concrete chips rained down on them. She looked at Dante. He was in his element, cold, precise, lethal. He wasn't afraid. He was angry. "Rocco, suppressive fire. I'm moving to the flank," Dante yelled. "No." Elena grabbed his leg. "Don't go." Dante looked down at her. "I have to clear the angle, or we're pinned." "It's a trap," Elena said, her voice trembling, but certain. "Don't you see, they fired once to make you take cover here? Look at the ground." Dante looked. They were crouched behind a steel beam, but right next to them was a pallet of red drums. "Oil," Elena whispered. "They herded us next to the fuel." Dante's eyes widened. He realized it instantly. The sniper wasn't trying to hit him. He was trying to pin him next to the flammable drums so a second shooter could ignite them. "Move!" Dante grabbed her hand. "Run now!" They sprinted away from the cover exposed to the open air. A second later, a bullet struck the red drums. Boom! The explosion sent a shockwave that knocked them both off their feet. A fireball rolled into the sky, consuming the steel beam where they had been hiding seconds ago. Dante rolled, covering Elena from the falling debris. They skidded across the asphalt, coming to a stop near the SUVs. Rocco and the security team were already returning fire, neutralizing the threat on the containers. Dante pulled Elena up. She was coughing, her grey suit covered in soot. He looked at the burning inferno, then at her. For the second time in 24 hours, she had seen what he had missed. "You..." Dante breathed, his chest heaving. "Who taught you tactical positioning?" "No one." Elena coughed. I notice things." Dante grabbed her face with both hands. His thumbs smeared the soot on her cheeks. The adrenaline was coursing through both of them, creating a volatile, magnetic tension. "You're not a waitress," Dante growled, his eyes searching hers. "You're a witch, or a guardian angel." "I'm just a girl who wants to go home," she whispered. "Too late," Dante said. He pulled her toward the car. "You're not going anywhere. If they want war, I'll give them the apocalypse." The ride back to the compound was suffocating. Dante spent the drive barking orders into his secure phone, initiating a full lockdown, while Elena stared out the window, her hands trembling. She kept seeing the explosion at the docks, feeling the weight of Dante's body shielding her. She was terrified. Yes, but beneath the fear was a dark, thrilling pull toward the monster sitting beside her. When they arrived at the glass fortress, Dante marched her straight to the war room, a bunker of screens and servers in the basement. 3 attacks in 2 days, Dante said, slamming his hand on the digital map. "The poison, the lounge, now the docks. Cray knows my movements before I do." Rocco stood by the wall looking ashamed. "Boss, I vetted the team. We're clean." "Someone is talking," Dante roared, pacing like a caged tiger. "Someone close." He stopped abruptly, his eyes locking onto Elena, the color drained from his face. "The nursing home." Elena's head snapped up. "What? If they know my schedule, they know I ran a background check on you. They know about your mother." "You said it was secure," Elena whispered, panic rising in her throat. "You said you put a detail on her." "I did," Dante said, grabbing his jacket. "But if I have a leak, my security detail is compromised. We have to go. Now." They took an inconspicuous sedan, Dante, driving with aggressive precision. They reached the Pineview Care Facility in 20 minutes. It was a quiet brick building, surrounded by oak trees, looking peaceful to the world. To Dante, it looked like a tomb. They entered through the service entrance. The hallway was empty. Too empty. They moved silently toward room 304. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Please let her be okay. Dante kicked the door open, weapon raised. "Clear." Elena rushed in. The bed was made. The room was tidy. But it was empty. "Mom!" Elena cried out, checking the bathroom. "Mom!" There was no answer. On the bedside table, where her mother's reading glasses usually sat, was a single playing card. The Joker. Scrawled across the face in red ink were the words, "The waitress for the Queen." Elena collapsed onto the bed, clutching the card. "They took her. They took her because of me." Dante walked to the window, his jaw set so hard a muscle twitched in his cheek. He didn't offer empty platitudes. "We get her back. Tonight." "How?" Elena sobbed. "We don't know where they are." "We don't need to find them," Dante said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "We have what they want. They didn't take her to kill her, Elena. They took her to trade." Elena's phone buzzed. A blocked number. Dante nodded. "Speaker." Elena swiped the screen with a trembling finger. "Hello?" "Hello, Elena." The voice was smooth, cultured, and chilling. "Victor Cray." "Where is she?" Elena screamed. "Mrs. Vance is comfortable," Cray said. "Her dementia is convenient. She thinks she's on a field trip. I have no interest in old women, Elena. I am a businessman. I want to make a trade." Dante stepped closer. "I didn't know I belonged to you, Victor." "Ah, Dante, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the girl. She saw something she shouldn't have. She has the memory." "She has nothing," Dante said. "She saw the ring I used to drop the capsule," Cray countered. "She saw the crest. That crest identifies my employer. I can't have a waitress walking around with that description in her head. So here is the deal. Bring the girl to the abandoned steel mill in Sodo, midnight, alone. If I see one guard, the old lady dies." "No deal," Dante said immediately. "Then prepare for a closed casket," Cray said. "Wait!" Elena screamed. "I'll do it! I'll come!" "Smart girl," Cray said. "Midnight." The line went dead. Dante smashed the phone against the wall. "You are not going." "It's my mother," Elena yelled, standing to face him. "I dragged her into this. I have to go." "It's a trap. He won't let her go. He'll kill her. He'll kill you, and he'll kill me. That is how this works." "Then what do we do?" Elena pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We can't just leave her." Dante looked at her, seeing the resolve in her eyes. She wasn't asking for permission. She was stating a fact. If he didn't take her, she would go alone and die. "We go," Dante said finally. But we don't go alone, and we don't play by his rules. He dialed a number. Get the team. Bring the heavy artillery. We're burning the steel mill to the ground. He turned back to Elena, his gaze unguarded for the first time. It wasn't just protective, it was possessive. He stepped close, gripping her shoulders. I won't let them take you. You're mine. Elena shivered. It should have terrified her. But God help her, it made her feel safe. The steel mill was a skeletal beast of rusted metal and broken glass, looming in the rainy darkness of the Sodo district. They parked a mile away. Rocco and the tactical team fanned out into the shadows, moving like ghosts. Dante and Elena walked down the center of the road, exposed just as Cray had demanded. Dante wore a long trench coat, concealing the arsenal beneath. He held her hand, his grip bruising. Don't look at the rafters, Dante whispered. Look at me. They reached the central loading bay. A single floodlight illuminated a patch of wet concrete. Standing there was a wheelchair. Elena's mother sat in it, wrapped in a blanket, looking confused but unharmed. Behind her stood Victor Cray, a gun pressed to the back of her head. He was flanked by 10 men with assault rifles. Right on time, Cray called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Stop there. Dante stopped 20 feet away, pulling Elena slightly behind him. Let her go, Victor. You have me. I'm the prize. You are a bonus, Dante. Cray smiled, the scar on his face twisting. But she is the loose end. Send her over. Once she is here, I push the wheelchair to you. Don't do it, Dante whispered. I have to, Elena whispered back. She stepped out from behind him. She walked forward, the rain plastering her hair to her face. She looked at her mother. Her mother smiled vacantly. Elena, is that you? It's past your curfew. It's okay, Mom. Elena choked out. She was 10 feet away. That's close enough, Cray said. He shifted his aim from the mother to Elena's chest. Goodbye, Waitress. Now! Dante screamed. The night exploded. From the high rafters, Rocco and his team unleashed a wall of lead. 3 of Cray's men dropped instantly. Dante didn't dive for cover. He sprinted forward, covering the distance to Cray in seconds. Cray fired at Elena, but she had learned. She dropped, throwing herself toward the wheelchair as the bullet whizzed over her head. Dante crashed into Cray, tackling him into a pile of scrap metal. The gun skittered away. Elena reached the wheelchair. Mom, get down! She pulled the chair behind a concrete pillar as bullets sparked off the ground around them. Dante! She screamed. Dante and Cray were locked in a brutal struggle. Cray pulled a knife, slashing Dante's forearm. Dante didn't flinch. He grabbed Cray's wrist, twisting it with a sickening crack, then punched him in the throat. It was savage. It was personal. Cray collapsed, gasping for air. Dante stood over him, chest heaving, and leveled his handgun at Cray's head. Wait! Cray wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. Don't you want to know who hired me? Dante paused, finger on the trigger. Speak. It wasn't an outsider. Cray laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. It was your brother. Dante froze. The color drained from his face. I don't have a brother. He died 10 years ago. Did he? Cray grinned, teeth stained red. Ask the councilman. Ask Halloway. Bang! A single shot rang out. But it didn't come from Dante. Cray's head snapped back a bullet hole in the center of his forehead. He slumped back dead. Dante spun around, weapon raised. Standing at the entrance of the bay was Councilman Halloway, holding a smoking pistol. He was surrounded by police officers, corrupt ones on his payroll. "Good work, Dante," Halloway called out, stepping over the puddles. "You cleaned up the mess, but I couldn't let him talk. He was getting delusional." Dante lowered his gun slowly. He looked at Halloway, then at the dead body of Cray. The setup wasn't just Cray. It was the political establishment. Halloway had used Dante to kill Cray, and now he was going to pin the murder on him. "Drop the weapon, Mr. Moretti," a police sergeant shouted. "You're under arrest for the murder of Victor Cray." Dante looked at Elena huddled behind the pillar. She was safe for the moment, but he was trapped. If he fought, he died. If he surrendered, he went to prison, and Elena would be left unprotected against Halloway. Dante made the choice that shocked everyone. He turned his back on the police and walked toward Elena. "Stop, or we will fire," the sergeant yelled. Dante ignored them. He reached Elena and knelt down, pressing a small, heavy key into her hand. "Take this," he whispered. "Station locker 42 at Union Hub. There is a drive. It has everything on Halloway. Everything." "Dante, no," Elena cried, gripping his sleeve. "Run," Dante said. He stood up and raised his hands. "I surrender," he shouted. As the police swarmed him, shoving him against the wall, he locked eyes with Elena one last time. "Go," he mouthed. Elena didn't waste the sacrifice. While the police focused on the Mafia boss, she grabbed the wheelchair handles and pushed her mother into the shadows, slipping out the back exit into the rainy night. She was alone again, but this time she held the key to the city's darkest secrets. And she was going to get him back. The rain had stopped leaving Seattle slick and reflecting the neon lights of a city that never really slept. Elena sat in a cheap motel room on the outskirts of Tacoma, the kind of place where questions were never asked. Her mother was asleep on the lumpy mattress, exhausted. Elena sat on the floor, holding the silver key Dante had pressed into her palm. Union Hub, locker 42. She looked at her reflection in the dark television screen. Her hair was matted, her grey suit ruined. But the eyes looking back weren't the eyes of a waitress anymore. They were the eyes of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Dante Moretti had surrendered his freedom to buy her time. If she wasted it running, she insulted his sacrifice. She stood up, washing her face in the rusted sink. She took the gun she had scavenged from Cray's body and tucked it into her waistband. Leaving a note and cash for her mother, she slipped out into the night. Union Hub was a labyrinth of shadows at 2:00 a.m. Elena pulled her collar up, moving with a purpose she didn't feel. She found the lockers in the B-wing. Her hand trembled as she inserted the key. It turned with a smooth click. Inside there was no money, no diamonds, just a ruggedized hard drive and a single sheet of paper. "I wouldn't walk out that exit if I were you." A voice rumbled from the shadows. Elena spun around, hand on her weapon. Rocco stepped into the light. The giant head of security looked worse for wear, arm in a sling bandage around his head. But he was alive. "Rocco," Elena breathed. "I thought you were dead." "Takes more than a few bullets," Rocco grunted. "But the boss, that's a different story." "Where is he?" "County jail. Maximum security. But Halloway is fast-tracking a transfer to a federal black site. Once Dante gets in that van, he disappears. Accidents happen during transport." Elena gripped the hard drive. "I have the evidence. Dante said this would destroy Halloway." We can't just walk into a police station, Rocco warned. Holloway owns the chief. We hand that over. It disappears, and we end up in a ditch. We need to play it publicly. How? Holloway is hosting the Safe Streets Gala tomorrow night at the Grand Pacific Hotel. Every news outlet, every donor, every federal agent in the state will be there. He's announcing his run for governor. The irony was sickening. The man who hired assassins was hosting a gala for safe streets. We crash the party, Elena said. Impossible. Rocco shook his head. Security will be tighter than the Pentagon. Facial recognition, list checking. We are fugitives 1 and 2. Elena looked at her ruined suit, then at the hard drive. A plan began to form, reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of plan Dante would have hated. They are looking for Elena Cross, the executive assistant, she said softly, and they are looking for Elena the fugitive. She looked up at Rocco, a cold determination hardening her features. But nobody looks at the help. Nobody notices the waitress. Inside the King County Jail, Dante Moretti was fighting for his life. They had put him in general population, a death sentence. Holloway wanted him exposed. Dante sat on his bunk staring at the concrete wall. He was bruised, his cut forearm throbbing, but his mind was sharp. He knew Holloway would send someone tonight. The cell block went quiet. Too quiet. The lights flickered and dimmed. The cell door buzzed and slid open. Dante stood up slowly. He didn't rush. He waited. 3 men entered. They were huge, tattooed with rival gang insignia. They were armed with Shiv's toothbrushes, filed down to needle points. "Holloway sends his regards," the leader hissed, lunging forward. Dante moved. He didn't fight like a brawler. He fought like a surgeon. He sidestepped the first thrust, grabbing the man's wrist and using his momentum to slam him into the second attacker. The third man swung low, aiming for Dante's kidneys. Dante took the hit, a grazing slice across his ribs, so he could land a devastating knee to the man's nose. It was brutal, ugly work. Within 30 seconds, 2 men were groaning on the floor, and the leader was pinned against the wall, Dante's forearm crushing his windpipe. "Who is the contact?" Dante growled. The suit," the man choked. "Holloway. He said, make it look like a riot." Dante released him. He stepped out of the cell into the corridor. The guards were nowhere to be seen. Dante knew he couldn't stay here. If the inmates didn't get him, the transfer would. He had to hope Elena had found the key. He had to hope she was smart enough to run. But deep down, he knew she wouldn't run. That was the problem. She was too loyal for her own good. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Elena and Rocco worked out of a safe house in the industrial district. "The catering company is Emerald City Events," Elena said, reviewing the tablet Rocco had procured. "I temped for them years ago. High turnover. They never check IDs properly for large events. They just need bodies to carry trays." "It's risky," Rocco grumbled. "If they scan your face." "I'll change my face," Elena said. She went to the bathroom with scissors and cheap hair dye. She cut her long dark hair into a sharp, jagged bob and dyed it a severe platinum blonde. She applied heavy makeup, changing the contour of her nose and cheekbones. When she stepped out, she didn't look like Elena Vance. She looked like a stranger. "The drive," Elena said. "We need to get it into the main projection system." "The AV booth is on the mezzanine," Rocco pointed to the map. "It's guarded, but the cables run through the service elevators. I can get to the service elevators, Elena said. I just need you to create a distraction. A distraction? Rocco cracked his knuckles. I can do distractions. The night of the gala arrived. The Grand Pacific Hotel was a fortress of light and luxury. The governor, the mayor, and Councilman Halloway were all in attendance. Elena walked in through the loading dock with 20 other temp workers. She wore the standard uniform, black slacks, white shirt, black bow tie. She kept her head down. You new girl, the catering manager barked. Take this to the VIP section, and don't spill it. Yes, sir, Elena said, pitching her voice lower. She walked into the ballroom. It was dazzling. Chandeliers and orchestra playing Mozart laughter that sounded like breaking glass. At the front of the room stood Councilman Halloway, shaking hands, smiling that shark-like smile. Behind him was a massive screen displaying his campaign slogan, Order from Chaos. Elena moved through the crowd, heart hammering. She made her way to the service elevator and pressed the button. Hold it. A security guard stepped in front of her. Where are you going? Refill on the appetizers, Elena said, lifting her empty tray. Kitchen is in the basement. The guard squinted at her face. For a second, Elena thought it was over. Go ahead, he grunted, stepping aside. The doors closed. Elena dropped the tray. She didn't go to the basement. She hit the emergency stop between floors, pried open the panel in the ceiling, and climbed up into the shaft. It was filthy and dangerous work. She shimmied up the cables to the mezzanine level, prying open the doors from the inside. She slipped into the hallway behind the AV booth. Rocco was outside, waiting for the signal. Elena texted him. In position. 2 minutes later, a smoke bomb detonated in the lower vents. Panic rippled through the gala. Security shifted to secure the exits. The guard outside the AV booth looked down at the commotion. Elena slipped past him into the darkened booth. The technician was distracted by the smoke. She moved fast, locating the main server tower. She pulled the flash drive from her pocket and jammed it into the port. The technician spun around. Hey, what are you doing? Elena didn't hesitate. She pulled her gun and leveled it at him. Sit down, she commanded, and don't touch anything. On the stage below, Halloway was trying to calm the crowd. Please, everyone, it's just a minor malfunction. Elena typed the password Dante had written on the paper. Jugular. She hit enter. Elena stared at her reflection in the motel mirror. Platinum blonde wig, sharp contour a stranger's eyes. Dante had surrendered his freedom to buy her time. She wouldn't waste it. Rocco had secured the schematics for the Grand Pacific Hotel, where Councilman Halloway was hosting his Safe Streets gala. Security is tight, Rocco warned, checking his watch. Facial recognition at every door. They look for threats, Elena said, adjusting her catering uniform. Nobody looks at the help. The gala was a sea of tuxedos and hypocrisy. Elena moved through the ballroom with a tray of champagne head down, heart hammering against her ribs. She slipped into the service elevator, but instead of heading to the kitchen, she hit the emergency stop. She pried open the ceiling hatch, shimmying up the greasy cables to the mezzanine level. Rocco's distraction, a smoke bomb in the lower vents, triggered the fire alarm. As security scrambled, Elena slipped into the unguarded AV booth. She leveled Cray's gun at the startled technician. Sit down, she commanded. She jammed the hard drive into the server and typed the password Dante had given her, jugular. Below the massive screen behind Halloway, flickered. His campaign logo vanished, replaced by gritty dashcam footage. Halloway's own voice boomed through the speakers, crystal clear. I don't care about collateral damage. Kill Moretti. The ballroom froze. Halloway stood paralyzed on stage as the screen displayed bank transfers emails and the order to burn the Onyx Lounge. "Turn it off!" Holloway shrieked, backing away. "It's a fake!" But the evidence was undeniable. As federal agents swarmed the stage, Holloway sprinted for the side exit, bursting into the service corridor and straight into a wall of muscle. Rocco stepped out of the shadows, cracking his knuckles. "Going somewhere, Councilman?" Holloway stumbled back. "I can pay you." Rocco silenced him with a single, devastating punch to the jaw. Holloway crumbled unconscious before he hit the floor. 3 days later, the charges against Dante were dropped. On the cliff edge of the glass fortress, Dante found Elena watching the grey Pacific waves. He looked healed back in his bespoke suit, but the shadows in his eyes remained. "You disobeyed a direct order," Dante said, though his hand lingered tenderly on her cheek. "You had the money. You could have run." "I don't leave people behind," Elena replied, meeting his gaze. Dante stepped closer, the tension radiating off him. "It isn't over, Elena." The files revealed who Holloway answered to. Codename Lazarus. "It's my brother Luca. He's alive." Elena froze. "The one who died 10 years ago. He's back, and he wants the throne," Dante whispered. He gripped her hand. "That is why you must go. I've set up an account. Paris, Tokyo, go anywhere. Be free." Elena looked at his hand holding hers, the hand that had pulled her from the fire. She pulled away, raising her index finger to her own neck. She tapped the jugular 3 times. "Danger. I'm staying." Dante stopped breathing. He stared at her, stunned. "The wolf is at the door, Dante," she whispered. "You need someone to watch the shadows." He let out a ragged breath and pulled her flush against him, kissing her with fierce, desperate possession. The waitress was gone. The queen had taken her place. "Then stay," he murmured against her lips. "Rule with me." What a ride, from a terrifying moment in a lounge to the high-stakes takedown at a gala. Elena proved that courage comes from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this twisted saga of betrayal, loyalty, and romance, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Do you think Luca will come for them in the sequel? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next part of the story. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.